it down and flush them out. We don't play it with these cutters, bet my youngest chop it down.
Welcome to the Reframing the Image of Relationships podcast, where we dive into the heart of what makes relationships thrive. In a world filled with complexities and challenges, this podcast stands as a beacon of hope and wisdom, guiding you through the art of nurturing meaningful connections. Our discussions are more than mere conversations. They're a roadmap to healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Whether you're seeking to deepen your understanding of love, improve communication with your loved ones, or find guidance in times of relational turmoil, this podcast offers a fresh, faith-centered approach to facing these challenges together. As we unpack the mysteries of human interactions, we invite you to open your hearts and minds to the transformative power of love and empathy. Get ready to be inspired, enlightened, and equipped to see relationships in a new light. And now, to guide you through this journey of discovery, please welcome your host, a visionary leader and a true catalyst for change, Dwayne Dwyer, but we affectionately know him as the Mindset Coach.
Good morning, and welcome to this month's episode of Reframing the Image of Relationship. My name is Dwayne Dwyer, go by the Mindset Coach, and I am joined by Miss Lisa Keys, the voice of reason. As always, it is an honor to be here on these Saturday mornings to kind of share in conversation with you guys. And I'm excited to continue part 2 of Rewrite Your Story in 3 Liberating Steps. So before I get too far, Lisa Keys, again, the voice of reason, as always, good to see you. How are you doing on this beautiful Saturday morning?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for asking as well. And like I said, it's good to be here. Good to share a conversation with you, but it's also good to share in conversation with the livest chat and social media. Again, regardless of where you're joining us from, whether you're joining us from YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or whether you're joining us from LinkedIn, get into the comment section and say good morning, because we believe in acknowledging you by name on this platform. I don't think we really do a good job about that collectively. So we make sure that it's a normal part of every show that we do. So that being said, the rebirth of Nick, good to see you and good morning. Crystal Everett, good to see you and good morning. His divine appointment, welcome, good to see you. Miss Robin Brower, good to see you and welcome. Let's see, who else am I missing? Miss Charlotte Jordan, good to see you as always. Sammy, I hope I'm saying that right. Good to see you and good morning, and welcome to this morning's conversation. Again, regardless of where you are, just let us know that you're here, because we want to appreciate your presence. I don't know if there are any other things. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I get started, next Saturday morning, I'll say again, next Saturday morning, if you have not registered for the webinar, again, it's pretty much about discovering divine provision through unconscious or through conscious transformation. If you have not signed up for for that webinar yet, make sure that you scan that QR code up there in the corner and go ahead and register, because I mean, it's coming up fast. We're down to 7 days, and I'm pretty excited because I kind of know what I'm gonna talk about. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited for those who join us. And then do not forget, at the end of that webinar, there's going to be a Q&A session. So make sure that you get your questions. You can even start with questions before you even get to the webinar. In fact, I advise you to do so. Gin up some questions about divine provision, conscious transformation, things of that nature. And then let's talk about it at the end of that webinar. That said, Lisa Keys, is there anything else I need to cover? Anything that you want to cover before we get started?
I just wanted to add to what you're talking about, the webinar. So I'm excited about the webinar coming up. And then I would advise everyone that if you want to begin to grow and do some self-examination and understand even how to do that, to join for the price of a cup of coffee, it will be well worth time. Well worth your time to participate in this webinar. I will be there participating, so I'm excited about that. And we have, if you're on TikTok, follow us on TikTok. So we do our Sunday brunch on TikTok every Sunday, and I will be hosting for this Sunday. So I hope you guys can join us under the name that's right under my name, The Voice of Reason. If you subscribe, or the Mindset Coach, you subscribe to either one of those on TikTok, you'll see us go live at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. Oh, one more thing, Bible study. And we do Bible study. So if you want to know more about that information, put it in the chat and we will get that information to you. So there's so much we're doing, and I'm excited about being a part of the Total Mindset Shift community, aka the Empowered Perspective community. So thank you guys for joining us.
That's what I'm talking about. All right. That being said, I'm ready for my close-up. All right. Maya Angelou once said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. But what if your story isn't finished yet?" Welcome to Reframing the Image of Relationships, where we believe your past isn't broken. It's your breakthrough waiting to happen. Today, we're exploring Your Past Isn't Broken, where you get the opportunity to rewrite your story with 3 liberating steps. Discovering how paradigm shifts begin when you stop arguing for your limitations. So if you're ready to transform old patterns into new possibilities, let's rewrite your future together, starting right now. Thank you. So I wanted to keep that short because we ran out of time last time. I'm just being honest, man. We just got so engulfed in that conversation. It was a good conversation, though. So if you have not seen part 1, make sure you go back and look at part 1, and then you get to, you have this information as well, and then watch part 2 again, because I think it's a lot that we're going to grasp as we continue to go through this conversation. Now, to start this conversation off, we're going to talk about, paradigm shifts. Paradigm shifts begin when you stop arguing for your limitations. Now, simply put, when we think about paradigm shifts, not paradigm shifts, but paradigms. Paradigm in its most simplistic format is just a pattern, right? A pattern of thinking. And so a lot of times when we look at shifting, we have to be able to identify the pattern first, and then a conscious change in that particular pattern whatsoever. So that said, I want to start off, Lisa, with this first question. What's one belief that you believe we have about ourselves or relationships that we've defended, even though it's held us back?
There's so much that you can glean from this question, consider from this question. One of them are preconceived notions about ourselves, who we are. Is one thing. And I think that to me is a big thing, because when you don't understand who you are or your identity, then you behave in a way that you have adopted. That's for one, I think is a big it's something that I was considering as I was, thinking about this question. You said we, so I'm thinking you're speaking as a community, or so. I answered this question in a way that for myself as well, right? Some of my thoughts, some of the things that I had to learn. And I think that part of that was me understanding that I thought that I was this nice person, right? And so I was nice. And so anyone who I was in a relationship with would be, be grateful to be my friend, right? That was a thought that I had, but I wasn't understanding that it wasn't me, myself, that I had to consider, but it was the God in me. So those were some of the thoughts that I had as I considered this question.
I love where you're starting with it, with identity. because I promise you, I just had this conversation this morning with my mom. Um, a lot of times we struggle with identity, especially if you was raised in a single parent home. Make no mistake about it, it takes both parents for a child to have a clear understanding of who they are. And when one parent is missing, that child now has to go on a journey to try to either fill in the blanks, build a relationship with that other parent, or just, damage themselves and leaving carnage en route to come into some degree of cognitive clarity. So the journey of discovery of self is real. And so now you take that and you compound that on top of everything else. Now, how do I behave in the space of relationship? Well, I think, going to your point, when I don't necessarily know who I am, it's going to be very difficult for me to behave admirably so that the relationship can flourish and thrive. So, in essence, because I am struggling with my own identity, I use you to fill in the space of my own insecurities. And unfortunately, that really highlights a majority of relationships out there. There are some people who know that, some people who just don't know that, right? But then moving beyond that, you have that identity that is given to you as a man or a woman or whatever that looks like. And that also equates to the role that you play in relationship. Now, I really do believe within the scope of relationship, there is roles. And I know a lot of people they're totally against that. And for them, that's okay. Right. But that's what relationship is. What role am I playing in this relationship? And until I get that part, then I am missing it because there's some roles that I play and then there's some roles that she plays. But here is the issue. Sometimes we don't necessarily see what some of those roles may intertwine and interconnect with one another. So that doesn't necessarily mean that some of the roles that I fulfill that she can't, right? Maybe I just don't want her to. Like y'all know how I am. If I see her behind a lawnmower pushing across my grass, we're gonna have some problems, right? That grass is not out there for her to cut. That's either out there for me or my son or somebody. I pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I pay you X amount of money to come cut my grass." That's just my own hangup. Now, that does not necessarily mean that works for Tamika and Tyrone. Whatever Tamika and Tyrone agrees in their house and they have come to an agreement for, that's their business. So looking at the identity that was given to me, and I said it before in the last conversation, the whole provide and protect thing, even though the provide and protect thing is an aspect of who you are, but the issue for me is that, sure, that's a portion of what I'm supposed to do, but that's not the entirety of what I'm called to do. And until I realize that, not only will I limit myself to just provide and protect, I can also set the conditions to where when you look at me, that's all you see. So when you see only provision and protection, you only come to me for provision and protection. My children only see me as provision and protection. So now that what that does for her is the kids will take everything else and put on her because I only need to go to dad when it's time to provide and protect. So I love the identity piece because that's exactly where I was at. I was right there with the identity, the prescribed identity that was given to me, right? Even in the space of not necessarily having a clear cut identity because I didn't have both parents in the household growing up. So now, in the space of struggling, provide and protect, now how do I fulfill that role when I never seen anybody do it? So that's kind of like my thoughts there. Any other comments or concerns that you want to add to?
No, as you said that, I thought about the ongoing conversation that we have pertaining, around centered around relationships, right? And you did touch on some of the aspects of how it feels for the male gender, providing and protecting, right? So you did touch on some of those aspects, and so I did want to ask a little bit more about how that causes you as a man to feel when so many in society now think that that's the most important aspect of being in relationship, the provision and protection.
So just want to make sure I'm understanding the question so I can answer it authentically. How does it make me feel when society has put a
Thank you.
cap,
Mhm.
kind of like a cap on who you're called to be in a relationship?
Yes.
Well, I think in the beginning when you don't know, it's not about me feeling, it's about me performing.
Okay.
And that's where I want to kind of start with because that's really what people are doing a lot of times in relationship. They're performing. They're trying to live up to the expectations that have been placed upon them, not necessarily recognizing what the commandments were that were placed upon them by the Father. So now, under the role of provision and protection, if you gave it to me, and I have to stress that piece. If
Mhm.
you gave it to me and I've allowed you to give me that identity, then what people need to understand is that I will never, ever live up to your expectations of the identity that you gave me simply because your requirements will shift and we won't even realize it. So your perception of provide and protect looks this way in our younger years, our survival years, what I like to call. Once we move beyond surviving, now it looks different because you need to be here emotionally, you need to be available, you need to be a good listener, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. And like in our mind, we get overwhelmed, like, wait a minute, back here when we were surviving, this is what you told me, but now it's different. So that's why it's very difficult when we allow another person to give us their interpretation of our identity. So now, when going to your question, how does that make you feel?
Mhm.
Moving on into that, it makes me feel that I will never get this right. It's a never ending story. It is a never ending pursuit of something that is unattainable. But I don't want to just make it because I don't want everybody to hear this and say, oh, well, women only do that to men. No, men do it to women too. Right? I'll say it again, men do it to women too, because we see our moms, and trust me, we are raised, oh, my mom is great. She's perfect. There is no error in my mom. And so now what I do is I put the mantle of my mom around your neck and say, you got to be just like she was. No, you don't. That's not your responsibility. Your mother never died on the cross. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
So at the end of the time, I'm just sorry. It is what it is. That's what some people need to hear. Your mother never died on the cross. So now my spouse, his spouse, has no responsibility to be like your mom. She has every responsibility to do exactly what the Bible tells her to do as it pertains to progressing in relationship. Her responsibility is to understand what it says for her. His responsibility is to understand what it says for him. And here's where we get into issues. I will go to her and say, well, the Bible says you must do that. Wrong.
Hmm.
You will come to me and say, well, the Bible says you're supposed to love me like Christ loved the church. You don't even know what that looks like. Worry about what you're supposed to do and let me worry about what I'm supposed to do. And you know what? Let's come in the middle and express that to one another. I think we'll find that actually works a whole lot better. So I know I went a little extra, but I just want to add that piece to it as well.
No, but that's good for explanation because the process of becoming one is important, right? When each individual works on what God has instructed them to do, and then the process of becoming one is a little bit more genuine and authentic than it is when you're trying to force something that you have adopted from your other examples. Because that's why leaving and cleaving is so important. So those are some of the thoughts that I thought of as you were explaining that. And thank you for answering the question.
No, thank you for asking the question. I thought it was a great question. And again, these are the cycles, the patterns of thinking that we find ourselves in, and it limits the relationship. It restricts the relationship. You never get to thriving and flourishing. You get to pretending and performing. So everybody else looking at you, they got a great relationship. They've been together for 30, 40, 50 years. Don't realize that when they get behind closed doors, they go to their separate rooms. He go watch TV and she go around the corner and just knit for the next 15 hours until he pass out drunk on the. I'm just telling you the truth.
Oh, wow. What an image.
That's okay. I went a little extreme, but I'm just saying. But I mean, I'm saying all that because I'm curious, what would happen if we stopped? What if we stopped arguing for the limitations of our paradigms? What if we stopped arguing for our own limitations? What new possibilities could actually emerge in our lives? And not just individually, but collectively.
Mhm. Okay, so what if we stop arguing for limitations and with what new possibilities could emerge in our life? See, this right to me, this is one of the questions that I thought of about arguing, just the whole process of arguing, right? And that can be an internal argument, and with yourself, or an external expectation that you have of someone else. And so, can you put the question back up? I'm sorry, I didn't get to see the other part of it. Okay, I do have it here. Okay, so the possibilities could emerge in our life. There's so much that can happen, right? We can have this we can have this level of peace and coming together to be thoughtful, to to be intentional about coming together. Like, okay, say for instance, if we have a disagreement about something, I think one of the most important aspects to me in relationship is communicating, right? And not putting an expectation on someone, but have sitting down and talking about it and say, this is what I see going on. This is what can happen. How can we make this better, right? Not arguing, because arguing is not going to help any aspect of us growing individually or us coming together to become one. It's not going to help. And we always say, I think, in our community that when emotions go up, cognition goes down. So there's nothing that can be that can be resolved in that environment. So we have to be mindful of how we're communicating with each other, and what are we trying to achieve in this moment? How can we make this better? How can we continue to grow? How can we look forward to make sure that we don't continue to have the same issue of arguing or being disagreeable. And sometimes that's at a point where you really don't understand why you're arguing, right? So you have to go sit down and do some work on yourself, do some self-examination, do some, all those things are a part of us becoming more aware of how we're feeling, why we're thinking the way that we're thinking. That's the work that we have to do. So those are some thoughts.
Yeah. I think I'll go back to the whole provide and protect thing. If that is all I allow myself to be, then my family suffers because of that. I'll say it again. And men, if you're out there, you're listening, I'm telling you what I know from experience. If you allow yourself to be only a provider and only a protector, then your family will suffer. Let me explain what I mean. If you are with child, and let's just say you have a boy child, man, your responsibility is to train that boy. I'm just telling you the goddamn truth. Your responsibility is to train that boy to be the best version of a young man that he is destined to be, right? It's mom's responsibility to nurture him through the pains that he is going to go through of growing and learning according to his father. If I have a girl child, moms, your responsibility is to train that young girl to be a responsible young lady. Fathers, your responsibility is to nurture that young girl all the way through the growing pains of the development that her mother is going to teach her. So if I only provide and protect, I can't really be a trainer or a nurturer. My kid will look at me and say, my dad worked hard. He always working. He may have always had some money in his pocket, but he was always working. He never got to the point of coming to my football game. He never came to my basketball game. He made it to my graduation, but he was late. When I graduated from college, he was on a business trip. He couldn't make it. So, and I'm speaking in extremes extensively because I think within the scope of all of that, if we're guilty of any of that, then that's evidence that we need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. Is my job more important than the development of my son? Is my job more important than being the first male figure that my daughter get to experience nurturing and love from? See, these things are things that I learned later. And when it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, whoa. And they weren't adults yet. They were still young. And that last part I just told you, that the male is her first example of how a man is supposed to treat her. I got that when I was deployed in Iraq. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, whoa, this is serious. It's really serious. My job is not supposed to be more important than my family, even though my job is the means in which I take care of my family. My family should always come first. When it comes down to spouse interaction, do I have the ability to have conversations with her? Like, do we have a contract, first of all? That's what I need to understand. Because I think a lot of times we have a contract, and what we're doing is we're arguing about what the job description says. But can I show up in the space of relationship and have honest, healthy conversation as it pertains to the development and growth of this entire relationship, because it's an experience. The relationship itself is an environment, and within that environment, we all have an experience, and those experiences teach us lessons about ourselves. So the lesson that she learned about herself, I'm supposed to not only be an accountability partner, but I'm also supposed to be an aid for her to grow and develop. Same thing for me, right? Everything that I learned, she's supposed to be an accountability partner for me, and then she is supposed to be there to help me grow through the things that I'm now learning that I'm supposed to be responsible for. Maybe I got it. Husbands, love your wives like Christ loved the church. What does that mean? I promise you, I can line 10 men up older than me. I'm 52. Give me a 70 plus year old man, and I line 10 of them up within the same age group. And I ask them, what does that mean? I promise you, I'm gonna get 10 different answers. So part of that is being available to wise counsel. Part of that is being available to what the Holy Spirit is going to tell me in time and space. And the other part of that is that the king should always be open to hearing the advice of the queen. So if all I am is provide and protect, none of that stuff I just talked about is available. None of it. Because I will box myself in, hey, food on the table, electricity on. I got I got the arsenal is around that just in case, they're strategically stationed throughout the house. Somebody break in, everybody know where to go. Everybody know what they're responsible for, and everybody know their sectors of fire. If I do that, I'm good. You said no?
That don't sound like relationship. That sound like prison. No. I'm sorry. I mean, just even with the example that you gave beforehand as well, right? So why would anyone want to be a part of a relationship like that in an environment like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, greatly appreciate you guys joining us. If you have not hit that like button yet, please hit that like button. And also, if you haven't shared it, find somebody that you know, love, and care about and share it with them, because this conversation is just going to continue to grow and move forward. If you don't mind, can you go all the way back and find Ms. Charlotte Jordan's statement? Because I love what she said. I think a lot of us are in this space or have been in this space at one point in time, because the unfortunate part is that we are conditioned a lot of times to be people pleasers. And the unfortunate piece of that, we believe that if I just make this person happy, then they'll be my friend.
Yeah.
But then I can't really be honest with them about what I'm experiencing in this relationship with them. Therefore, they will always be in control of the relationship. So thank you for saying that, Miss Charlotte Jordan. You're absolutely right. Also, next is Brother Abe. Good to see you, Abe. And welcome. He said, I used to think being low maintenance meant not asking for what I needed. Turns out healthy relationships actually require speaking up. It does. I don't know what I don't know if you don't ever share it. I'm not a mind reader. I don't learn through osmosis, right? So I thank you for sharing that, brother, and good to see you as always. His divine appointment. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate all that you're doing in this community. Again, for those of you who don't know, everything that we gift in this community gets put back in the community so that we can provide better products for you guys. So thank you again. That said, let's move on to the next talking point, which is all about the law of rhythm. Right? The law of rhythm explains why old stories repeat, but also how to break the cycle. The law of rhythm itself is a universal principle. It states that everything in the universe moves in cycles, like a pendulum swinging back and forth, with ebbs and flows, highs and lows, action and rest. It teaches that nothing is permanent, and life naturally includes seasons of joy and sorrow, success and failure, encouraging acceptance and balance rather than resistance to these inevitable changes from the tides of our emotions and finances. So I like the notion of the law of rhythm because we can learn a lot through that. The book of Ecclesiastes tells us something that is really important for us to understand. To everything, there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. Behavioral science also confirms that repeated intentional practice forms new neural pathways, making new behaviors more automatic over time. So, the voice of reason. My question for you, ma'am, is how can we use the law of rhythm to consciously shift from repeating old patterns to creating new ones?
I think the first thing is to recognize it, and that happens. I think in two ways: to be intentional about what you're doing, and to be open to the blind spots in community. I think sometimes there's going to be a requirement for someone that you're in relationship with to say, hey, this is what I see. I mean, if we really truly care about each other and we want to see each other grow, we're going to be honest with each other. And a lot of times we don't like to say that because we want to remain friends and we don't want to, rock the boat. We want to make sure that the person doesn't see me as someone, I don't want to use a strong term like enemy, but sometimes people will see that. They will take it to that extreme, right? And so it's important that when you are processing and trying to figure out about how we need to make some adjustments in these patterns so that they won't continue to, because they can affect your, I think we talked about last night, fixed mindsets, right? So if you have a fixed mindset about something and you're not open to hearing or changing anything, that's not an environment for you to grow. So we have to grow each and every day. It's important for us to continue to grow, to continue to be aware, and to continue to not for ourselves though. We're not growing for ourselves. We're growing so that we can be a more affectionate, functioning part of our community. And I think that is very, very, very important. There were some, behaviors and mindsets. Of course, all of us are growing and learning. I pray each and every day that we recognize in ourselves. And it's important that if we can't do it, if we find that we can't figure it out and we continue to repeat these patterns of behavior, that we talk to someone about it. I think that's important as well.
Yeah, I like that. I really do. I like the fact that you mentioned what we talked about last night, right? Fixed mindset, and a growth mindset. And you know, if you watched that show last night, you probably heard me say something to where on the one side, what a fixed mindset is, and we think that once we have an understanding of what a fixed mindset is, the inverse of that is a growth mindset. But that is an error within itself because it does not identify the space that exists in between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So sure, as a fixed mindset, I may believe that I don't, I can't improve based upon intellect. I can't improve based upon emotional. I can't improve based upon skill set. Like this is who I am, and this is all I'm destined to be. Right. But then on the other side, I'm open to opportunity. I'm taking risk and all this other stuff, which is where growth mindset is at. But then there's that space in the middle. And that space in the middle is called confusion. Because once I went through periods of this, and then somebody made me aware that this is available. And then it's like, well, I've practiced this for so long. How do I do this? And so I pull aspects from this and thinking the only thing I got to do is say this right here, but I'm still doing this. And so there in that space of confusion, huh?
I say that's a conflict, internal.
It is.
Conflict.
It is an internal conflict, absolutely. And so, in that space of confusion, where cognitive dissonance exists, where I don't necessarily realize, like, wait a minute, like I know that this is available, but I can't. I don't. I'm not a. The man keep. I'm just gonna throw this in there. The man keep holding me down. Stuff. What I'm talking about. But in the midst of this question, I think it's key because you said intentionality. I have to be intentional about what I am focusing on consciously, right? Consciously shifting from repeating old patterns. Well, now that brings into another thing because in order for me to be intentional about what I focus on, I also need to be aware about what I have not been focused on. The things that I've put into automatic practices and things of that nature that is not healthy for the conducive nature of this relationship, for the progressive nature of this relationship, right? So now, what of those practices that I cannot see because now it's probably a blind spot, or it might be a part of an internal bias that I don't even know? I need my partner to point those things out. That's why I said what I said previously. The most trusted advisor to the king is the queen. I need her to tell me where I am in error, where I am not fulfilling the role that I'm called to do. Now, as I get that, I am consciously focused on, okay, this thing happened. What are the parameters to where I behave like this every time? What moves me into the space to do this consistently? So now that I've identified the pattern, right now there's a responsibility for me to either intentionally change that pattern or change the parameters that influence that pattern. This is intentional work to where a lot of time, and I don't mean no harm when I say this because I know somebody's gonna say, well, that's not true. I don't believe that. That's fine. You don't have to. it is very difficult for a person to do it within themselves. That's why it's a requirement for partnership forward progression. That's where, where we have to be open, honest, and vulnerable. And a lot of times, men, we got to be honest. A lot of times we don't really do good with when it comes down to being vulnerable. We think vulnerability is weakness. It is just the opposite. Vulnerability is a sign of strength.
So it made me think of two things when you were just talking. It made me think about the importance of an advisor, and even the Word of God teaches us that we should have good counsel around us, right? And so when I think about the dynamic and the environment of marriage, I'll use that for an example, right? In kingdom, I'm going to use that, add that as well, that as the advisor, the queen, to be the advisor to the king, right? If the king does not take her advice, then she can go to the father and say, "Listen, I told your son, he's not listening." But then you have to think about the other possibility, right? If we don't listen, and when the king is not listening, it affects the entire kingdom, right?
Mhm.
And so we have to be mindful that the wise counsel is to get us back on track when we can possibly come off a track, so that we can continue to have a healthy, thriving environment to grow in. And it's not just for ourselves, but it's for our community, not just ourselves. So we benefit, the entire community benefits from us being in a healthy, thriving environment. So that's one of the things that I thought about as you were talking. I could imagine in my mind this environment that we can create that can be something that we can continue to thrive and grow, and it goes beyond just us being in. For me, I think about our home, our married couple's home, as their kingdom. So it goes outside of our kingdom so that we can be a benefit to the entire, to other aspects of that kingdom. So that was my thought. That was my thought.
No, I love that thought, and thank you for saying that. I'm gonna make a statement. I heard this before, and I want you guys to tell me where I heard it from. Right? This is, and it's not for you, it's for them. I want somebody to put in the comment section where they heard it from.
Okay.
Right? And I love it. When I first heard it, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. You cannot beat a river into submission. You have to surrender. You have to surrender to its current and use its power as your own. That is the perfect explanation of the law of rhythm. I say it again. You cannot beat a river into submission. You have to surrender to its current and use its power as your own. Can anybody tell me where I heard that from? Okay. Miss Charlotte Jordan, again, she dropping dimes as she always does. She said it's a struggle sometimes to move forward when some things have been taught to you from a child. Absolutely. It is one that is she hit the nail on the head. That is part of your core. I always talk about the three parts of a person, right? The mirror, the core, and um the core, and I always miss one. The mirror, the core, and the mask. That's the third one, right? The mask is the person that you're showing up as because you believe that's who the environment is asking you to be, right? The mirror is the person that you see yourself as. However, unfortunately, the mirror may not necessarily be the identical, the identity, the true identity of who you are. And then last but not least, the core. The core is the makeup, the genuine makeup of who you are. That includes your upbringing, past experiences, trauma that you have not yet resonated with, all those other great things. That is the hardest person to change, the core. Ideally, you want all three of them to line up to look the same. The core is the hardest person to change. Trust me when I tell you, nobody ever wants to admit and or believe that mama and daddy was wrong. They were. I'm sorry. That's 100% true across the board, unless all they ever taught you was the word of God. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I love y'all, but that is the truth. They did not teach you everything 100% correctly. So yes, I'm sorry, great.
That was my stronghold, I'll say, or my struggle when I was going through professional development, was that this is the essence of who I thought I was, identity, right? And the ebbs and flows, and the emotional roller coaster that it produced, identifying that some of these things that I was taught was not correct. And I, in turn, pass them down because they were what I thought was the core, the very essence of who I was, right? And I passed them down. So later I had to go and have a conversation with, my adult children and say, listen, I didn't do this right. I told you this, but this is the right way. And I think that's what we should do. So yeah, the very essence and the core of who you think you are, the things that you grew up and you feel are foundational to you, right, are the things that is not the easiest thing for us to unpack, right, or even to stop doing, right. So
Yeah.
so those were some of my thoughts as you were talking.
Let me add on the backside of this, because I think this is important to say. That doesn't make them bad people.
No.
I just want everybody to understand that just because a person is wrong doesn't make them a bad person. They can only teach you what they know at that time. So that's the answer, right? So now we don't go back and chastise them because they didn't know. That's not what that's for. It's just recognition, and then do better moving forward. So I wanted to make sure I say that, because I don't want anybody to say, "Oh my God, you said my mom's a bad person." I didn't say that. I just said they could only teach you what they know. That's all. Okay. Let's keep moving forward, because time is really trying to move away from us. That brings us to breaking free requires both faith and action. I say again, faith and action. Transformation is a partnership. Remember, without question, the Bible tells us clear: faith without works is dead. I say it again: faith without works is dead. Two things can't be true at the same time. I'll say it like this. First and foremost, the Bible says that God has issued every man a measure of faith. You'll find that in Romans chapter 12. God has issued. God has issued. I say again, God has issued to every man a measure of faith. If he issued it, it is what it is. There is no such thing as strengthening faith. I know. I thought so too. Not true. God has issued to every man a measure of faith. It is our responsibility to do the works that goes along with the hope that I am looking forward to. And faith is the thing that allows me the bridge between my deeds and the hope. So the only thing that's left between the faith and the works is me looking at my works, seeing whether or not the works line up with the hope, and then adjusting the works so that it becomes more in line with that. Now, I got it. Some people may not agree. I get it. I understand, right? But it's not. I'm not saying that because I'm looking to challenge your perspective. I'm saying that because it needs to be said. I'm saying that because this is where we do better and be better moving forward. Okay. So that said, and trust me, at a later point in time, I don't mind telling you how that actually works and why it actually works. So that said, I want to ask you a question. Where have you witnessed a reliance on faith but neglected action, or vice versa? Action and did not have any faith for a hopeful outcome.
Wow. Okay. There were times when I relied solely on faith, right? Praying for a better relationship without taking the practical steps to improve and understand the understanding of love and commitment, right? So I wanted God to fix things while I remained passive. That was a part of it. Not realizing that faith requires me to add action to it. But on the other side, right? I sometimes took action without grounding those steps in prayer and seeking God's wisdom. So I did that as well. But then I began to realize, my faith needed to be coupled with belief, because that's something that we're learning now, even as we're going through the Bible study. Something that I'm learning that I think has been very impactful for me, right? The tangible actions that I had to use to get to this place was studying the Word of God, seeking guidance, and I did a lot of that, begin to learn a lot of that and unpack some of these things as I was doing some professional development and some mentorship and coaching. So some of those things I began to learn and understand at a much later age, and I think that I should have, but I'm thankful that I understand them, right? So that's when I think that's when I began to see some real transformation for me during those times, and understanding those aspects of faith, belief, my responsibility, and yeah, I'll stop there.
Hey, so I do like, but I do have a question because I do understand that some people may say, what if he did something wrong? And you can pretty much imagine what the wrong is that they're going to say, right?
Mhm.
What if he did something wrong? What deed would you have in regards to that?
Okay, I want you to be clear so we can address it.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Let's
Okay.
just say he decided he wanted to have extramarital activities.
Okay.
Because that's the hot button topic whenever we talk about marriage. So
Mhm.
what if he decided to have extramarital activities? Like what deed is available for you to do?
What deed is available for me to do? See, this is unfortunately something that I've had to to work through, right? So there's really no deed that for me to do, right? But to have the conversation, after I had my time, some moments for myself, but have the conversation. Um, and then also I think the first step for me, and that I can go back and say, is reflection, because I think I blame myself, right, for someone else's actions. So that was the first thing. But there was really nothing for me to do but figure out, take some time, figure out why this happened, and have the conversation, of course. For me, it was being quiet and to the point where I was stonewalling. But for something for me to do in that moment, all anyone can do, I believe, is have a conversation and consider what happened. Sit down and really be honest and see what's going on. Why did this happen? Why didn't we see the signs before it happened? Or maybe it's in an individual to do that because they don't quite understand what being in a relationship means, right? They don't understand the covenant responsibilities and commitment that they made, because that's what it is, for both individuals. So there's so much to unpack about as far as what you, the individual, could do. And I think the first step is just to have a conversation, I think.
Yeah, I thank you for that. Before I do that, before I give a response, thank you for being such a good sport for a difficult question too. Before I do that, she is becoming. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate the support to this community that you've been providing and continue to provide. So, greatly appreciate you, sis. So, like I said, thank you for being such a good sport to answer that question. I'm gonna give y'all the blueprint. Get ready. It's coming. I know it's going to be difficult to do. I know it's not going to sound like it's something that you want to do. But remember, like you just said, Lisa just said, hit the nail on the head. A lot of times we don't necessarily understand what a covenant relationship is. Let me say it like this first before I go here. His success is her success. His failure is her failure. Why? Because they are coming together to become one. So when he sins, she sins. When she succeeds, he succeeds. It is the ultimate teamwork. So when you look at something of that nature, that conversation doesn't look like chastisement as though that person is your child. That looks like sitting down and, let me explain to you, let me share with you how this makes me feel and why it makes me feel that way. Moving beyond that, now this is why, this is how we have sinned against him,
Mm.
right? So how do we do that better moving forward? Because even though one person performed the act, both parties are responsible for it. Coming together as one. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I ain't like that.
I get it.
I know.
That's why I say. That's why I say it doesn't feel good to hear that, especially if you're that person to where it's ever happened to you and you've never reconciled the thing. It may have made you feel a little uncomfortable. But just know that what I said wasn't an attack against you. It was just me sharing some information on how we can do it better moving forward. I get it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I want, I have to ask the flip side of this question, right?
Sure.
Because you took us there with that with that question. So it's because it seems like the covenant relationship is so important for us to sit down and have a conversation. But many men feel like once you break that covenant, I'm finished. Commitment's over. I can't do it. And then I've heard the Bible gives me the option to leave because you breached the relationship. I'm just saying that's what you hear.
I know.
Just saying, so
I know. I've heard that too.
oh,
So again, it doesn't change.
okay.
It doesn't change,
Okay.
right? I'm not even gonna touch that part. It doesn't. It doesn't change if I'm being completely transparent.
Okay.
Again, we got to recognize what a covenant is and what it actually means. If I lie, well, I mean, again, and I don't want to get into the differences between hope and lying and all that other great stuff. That's a whole nother conversation. But if I bear false witness, that is still me sinning against the Most High. If you know that I bear false witness, you actually hear me bear false witness out in public, you now have a responsibility that once we get behind closed doors, say, hey, can we sit down and talk? Right? That sounds different. That actually feels more comfortable. So why does the other thing feel less comfortable? Because it's more so in line of what I believe that you are supposed to be doing. And why I feel the way I feel is because what I observed, what I learned, what I heard, whatever that looks like, does not line up with what I believe you should be doing. And the space in between what I believe and what I now know, it doesn't feel good. So now I have to reconcile with this space. That's my responsibility. But for you have to reconcile because we got to come back together. We got to have this conversation. And then you specifically, we have to reconcile with the Most High. Absolutely. Sin means Mr. Mark. It's just like it comes from the whole arrow concept. I pull it out, I pull it back, I let it go, and it does not hit the bullseye. I missed the mark. Absolutely. So it does not mean condemnation. It means I have a responsibility now to atone for it. And again, that means repentance, that means prayer, that means turning from, right? Turning from. Yes. So that's why if we don't have that conversation and then we say, oh, well, that gives me permission to, and I can walk away from you, then that means I don't believe in repentance. I don't believe in forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
But I got it. Well, forgiveness doesn't mean reinstatement. I got it. I said that too. But at the end of the day, that's in extreme cases when a person has taken your ability to forgive for granted. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, greatly appreciate that. Thank you, Bugatti. That's a lot. I can't say. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. For the sake of time, we got to keep pressing forward. Let's skip that question. Let's go to the next one. The assertion, the community and vulnerability accelerate transformation. I know it's said to be an African proverb, and I'm not saying it's not, but I first heard this from John Maxwell at a conference where he said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I think we also see that in the Bible where the Bible says 2 is better than 1.
Yes.
And again, this is the notion of covenant. It doesn't mean that every partner in the covenant is going to be perfect. It's just that within the spaces of our imperfections, we don't lose sight of the hopeful direction that we're going into. Because I think, and this is kind of like me going back and answering my own question previously, I think one of the biggest mistakes that we don't do, I don't think we have a hopeful, well, let me say it this way. I don't think we have a future perspective of a hopeful outcome. What does that mean? Well, a lot of times we just look at it as that, oh, we're going to be together until we, leave this earth. Well, that's not necessarily a hopeful, right? That's just like, okay, I know for a fact that we're going to leave this earth. Yeah. And what we're saying is that we're going to be together until then. So is that really like a future perspective of a hopeful outcome? Or is that just taking 2 known facts and saying we're going to handcuff ourselves together and exist through it all? Just something to think about. But where can I get to the point to I have a future perspective of a hopeful outcome where it includes both you and I doing something not just for our family, but for the community and for the city and county that we live in, to where we are actually working together, building a legacy that will withstand the test of times. See, I think that's where we missed the mark. We don't give our relationship meaning to exist. Therefore, a lot of times our relationships struggle to exist.
Mm.
I say that part again because somebody missed it. We don't give our relationships meaning to exist. Therefore, throughout the course of time, they struggle to exist.
Mm. Mm.
When I really stop and let that sink in wholeheartedly, we miss it. See, community and vulnerability, which accelerates transformation. One thing that we don't necessarily grasp is that the foundation of community is the family. So if we look at the struggles that exist in the community, we don't necessarily realize that, well, it takes a village to raise a child. Sure, if
Mm.
the child doesn't have parents,
Mm.
but what if the child had both parents? Then the village don't have to raise the child. The child can actually be beneficial to the village. See, a lot of times we look to extract from instead of giving to, because we view this whole thing in the wrong direction. Robin Brower, thank you so much. Again, greatly appreciate all that you have been. Listen, you have been a spark from day one since coming into this community. So thank you so much.
We appreciate
Greatly appreciate you. The community suffers because our understanding of family have suffered.
Mm.
The church suffers because the community suffers.
Mm.
Can I keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. Those who write policies,
Mm.
that's right. Those who write policies, their character suffers because the church suffers. Because if we do it right, hear me and hear me well. If we do it right, the heads of churches should be sitting in county council meetings. Why? Because they have the voice of the community. They know what the community wants. They know what the community needs.
Mhm.
So all of us bickering, going back and forth with our political agendas is pointless. They don't care about you. And to be honest with you, you don't care about them. You just care that they're not doing what you want them to do. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. I'm sorry. But when we get out of this selfish way of thinking, let's go back and fix the family. Fix the family.
Yes,
So
of
now
course.
the family can fix the community. So now the
Mhm.
community can fix the church. And then the church can fix policies.
Yeah.
When
That's
we
good.
do that, now we'll get to the point of the structure that actually works. And we'll stop playing Russian roulette.
Mhm.
So interesting statistics without data, without numbers, I say it that way, is that peer and community support dramatically, I say it again, it dramatically increases the likelihood of sustained transformation and habit change. Now we have families who are building, they're training their children up in the ways that they should go. I got to do that when I say go, because we struggle with that. Because I don't want you to leave me. Who am I going? What am I going to do without you? Live. Train them up in the ways that they should go, and then when they go out in the community, then the community understands that they were raised in the way that they should go. So when they see them out of line, like, hey, don't have me call Lisa. Lee's gonna put them hands on you, fella. I'm just, but that's how it should work. So when we look at it, peer and community support dramatically increase the likelihood of sustained transformation? Yes. Because the standard is the standard is the standard. I'll say it again. The standard is the standard is the standard. I raise my children under the same standard that my community peers, people who believe like me, the same belief system, they raise their children as. The law is the law is the law. So if that's the case, now that gets us to the point to where we get to start sharing stories. We get to talk about our ancestors. We talk about our grandparents and our grandparents, because they've done some things and they shared stories of some things, and they told me about my great 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 granddaddy and my great 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 grandmama and the things that they did for the community. the centers that they built, the families that they fed, and things of that nature. So, how does sharing your story, even the messy parts, create space for healing and new beginnings?
So I want to echo what Miss Charlotte Jordan said in the chat. First of all, that is how did when we were our upbringing. They did. There was a lot that was done right, right. As far as some communities, us coming together and making sure that we were okay, right. So there are some things I can remember, fondly growing up, about the people in my community who, as you said, believed like your parents did. And when you saw them and you knew you was doing wrong, you felt shamed or you felt fear. Right? Just saying. Yeah. So those things were a part of our upbringing, and so um sharing your story, there's that painful, those messy parts, right? But it allows you to process some of these experiences and share them. And because when you share, some of those, there's lessons to be learned. There's lessons to be learned in some of those aspects of sharing your story, the messy parts, and creating space for healing and new beginnings, right? And so I like the aspect that you talked about with the vulnerability. Um, and then it also makes me think about when we begin to heal in the new beginning. It makes me think about the grace that is extended to us, right? And the love that God has for us. And he said he does not want not even one of us, he don't want to lose any of his children. He loves us all. So it makes me think about that, right? And I think that through these conversations that we can grow together, we can be mindful of being in community together, and that we're not taking this journey alone. We have to be mindful that we're not doing this journey alone, that we're doing it with each other. And I think that's the important part. And it makes me think about the body and how important it is when I think about 1 Corinthians 12, where we're coming together so that we can all work together, and together we're stronger. Because doing it alone, there are some vulnerabilities that we leave ourselves open to. When we come together as a body and each of us do our part, then we're stronger. And we're also helping the other parts of the body to continue to be stronger as well. So those are some of my thoughts.
I love those thoughts. I would say, in conjunction with what you're saying, we got to get out of the habit of these prescribed excuses that we have in our heads that gave us grace based upon what we're doing. I don't need grace from another person. I need understanding. I'm saying it again. You don't need grace from another person. You need understanding. I did the best I could with what I had. That is a statement that has been created begging for another person to, give them grace. Um, whatever other excuse we can come up with, right? It was different back then. Sure. It was different. It's different now. I mean, that's going to always be the story. That's going to always be the case. What we cannot do is start making alibis for the behavior that we have. We have to get to the point of being completely transparent with our children. Listen, it's okay to tell your child, I had no idea what I was doing when you were born. You and I were figuring it out together. You were figuring out how to be a child, and I was figuring out how to be a parent to raise you to be an adult. And I'm gonna tell you the truth, I was more confused than you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that statement.
Nothing.
Nothing whatsoever.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with sharing some of the struggles that you guys been through. There was a time where, and I hope this was never anybody's story, but I know it has been somebody's story. There was a time where, we didn't have no food and we didn't have that, or we lived in a car for a week just simply because I was trying to figure it out. Right.
Mhm.
We want our children to see us as these superhuman beings, but they don't. They see you exactly how they want to see you. You didn't create that narrative for them. They did.
Mhm.
So you telling these stories, only the good versions of the story, by the way.
Mm.
They don't really believe that there was no bad that happened. They don't even believe that you didn't do anything wrong.
Mm.
They just believe what they believe because of who you are to them.
Yeah.
That's how it works. Like you create, and I'm just saying this and give you guys a snippet again. You create the reality that you see. So when your child look at you, they created that reality, largely just simply because of who you are, not because of what you did.
Mhm.
And then later on, the worst thing that we'll do is whenever they do something that we don't want them to do, we remind them of all that we've done for them. What? Are you serious right now? You want me to give you credit for being responsible? Make that make sense? It's like
That's,
saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead."
now I'm just saying that's a missed opportunity,
It is a
right?
missed opportunity.
To sit down and have a conversation because that's a part of equipping, and it's so that's such an important part that we sometimes miss out on because of the preconceived notions in the essence of our foundation of who we thought we are in our identity. We missed the opportunity to say, let's talk about this, and hear their thoughts. And this helps them, so critical thinking, so that when they go out and they have these conversations and they can be thoughtful, they can use forethoughts. I think those are the opportunities that are so important. So I became during, as I began to develop and learn, became good at asking questions. And then also asking myself questions and thinking into them. So I think those opportunities are missed when we get. And I want to add this before I land here. That's the opportunity for us to see how our young adult children are thinking. I'm talking about, even teenagers, right? It's an opportunity because there's going to be a point where they're under our authority. So this is an opportune time for us to put in them, talk to them, ask them questions, see what they're thinking, see how they respond, right? And because they're not going to be under our authority forever, you got to let them go, as Coach said earlier. They're going to transition. They're going to be under God's authority, and so we have to be sure that what we put in them is going to help them to live the life that they're going to live from under our authority. So those are the thoughts that came to me when you said that about having the conversations, even with our teenage. You know, I have. I ain't even gonna say that anyway. I was gonna tell you the age of my grandchildren, but I had this conversation with them as well, and they were like, "Oh, grandma," and. But I don't think they'll forget the conversations that we've had. But just knowing that you've equipped them so they can go and they can begin to do, but you're always there. But equipping them and having the conversations and taking those moments and don't miss those opportunities, I think is good.
Absolutely. I think, and I don't want to limit it to just, the adolescent years,
Yeah.
right? They probably need to hear it more as adults, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't, and that's why I say it doesn't really matter what the facts are. They already understand in their mind who you are to them anyway. In fact, in most cases, they've seen some of the foolishness that you do. That's the other part. You're still trying to paint the picture as though you're innocent. In your child's mind, you're not innocent. You just mama. You just daddy. And that's good enough. But what you want to do is you want to tell the story as though I was a good mama. I was a good daddy. No, you weren't. You were
Ooh.
just mama. You were just daddy. That's it. There's no need for good being in front of it. The Bible said, Christ said, "Why calleth thou me good?" None is good but
Mm,
the Father. That includes you. So if good is part of your lexicon about your identity, move
mm,
the word good because good does not belong to you. That
mm.
is a known, that is the truth.
Ooh, I hear that so much.
That is the truth.
All good.
No parent,
Mm,
no parent on this earth has the authority to call themselves a good parent. You're not that. You were just a parent. And being just a parent is good enough.
that is.
being able to tell not just our story, but the family story, it allows meaning to exist behind your name. I think for me, this was something that I had to gain at a later point in time because I remember when the older generation start, moving on, transitioning, things of that nature. Being able to hear some of the stories that they would tell, about some of the relatives I never met. I think that actually it meant something. It put meaning behind your name. And if you don't have that, I'm sorry to hear that, but you have an amazing opportunity now for you to put meaning behind your name. See, the Bible says something that is profound. And I think the part that we miss is that when we look at our children, right? Our children is supposed to be, I know we talked about raise them up the way that they should go, but when they go, they should not discredit the name. The reason why that's significant because the name Keys should live on from generation to generation to generation. It should mean something in every generation. The name Dwyer should live on from generation to generation to generation. But it's incumbent upon whoever the senior is in that lineage to ensure that the name matters to the younger generation. And if we're not doing anything to ensure that the name matters in the younger generation, then they don't have to worry about discrediting the name. They just have to worry about not discrediting themselves. That is where we get into danger because now I am only responsible for me. No, I'm not. I'm responsible for that last name that my dad gave me. That part means something, and we don't talk about it from the standpoint of meaning. Therefore, our children behave as though it's meaningless. So now that makes me look at this whole notion about community. That makes me look at this whole notion about, you know, sharing our story. It helps the younger generation to realize that, man, these things that I'm struggling with, you struggle with too? Yes, absolutely. Not only did I struggle with your granddaddy struggled with it too. Are you serious? Yes. So you mean to tell me I'm not worthless? No, that's not it at all. You're human and you're going to go through life struggles. And these struggles didn't begin and end with you. See, we don't share those things. And so now when our children go through those things, they feel like, oh, well, I'm just such a bad person. No, you're not. You're just living a human experience. And a lot of times we just don't open the door to invite them in. So now when it comes down to reframing their story, now they have permission to reframe their story because they recognize that, oh, this is just something I got to go through. Yes. Now the reframe is taken for. So now I don't feel like this terrible person. I don't feel like this bad person because I had a failed relationship. Oh, wait, what? Dad, you had a failed relationship too? Yep. Your granddaddy did? Really? Oh, man. All right, then. You know, well,
Not
that's generational curse. Stop it. Just stop it. Stop it. That's not a generational curse. That is what we call that's just ignorance. If you don't know, you don't know. Why don't we get to the point to where we start educating? Right? Because at some point when you realize that my great granddaddy, my granddaddy, my daddy, oh, well, that means that there's something in these generations that they didn't know. So now we go on this journey of learning so that now, from me moving forward, generations have a better understanding. I'm off my soapbox. I don't talk about that for now. Any other thoughts? Okay, sorry. Because I mean, this part is extremely important. That's why the community suffers.
Mhm.
So, any
Yeah.
other thoughts you want to add to that?
No other thoughts to add to that. I don't think, yeah. I'm not gonna add to it.
Yeah, listen, I greatly appreciate you guys' response. I love what Charlotte Jordan. I'm gonna show this real quick. She said, sharing our story gives the next generation a look into their family history to learn from the good, the bad, and the ugly. But it needs to be told. Absolutely. And just don't wait. Don't wait until there's nobody left to tell the stories. That's
Yeah,
my fear. That's my
that's
fear right there.
but that's
Go
it.
ahead. I'm sorry.
That's the instructions that God's given us. But tell this to your children and their children. The some of the practices or some of the experiences or the instructions that I gave you. Pass this down to the children and their children and their children. And so I think that's important. I'm not talking about rituals. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about the experiences that we have and the instructions to help us to move past some of them that may not always be good, but there
Mhm.
is a process that is available for us to come through them. And I think that's important because these are the instructions God gave us. These principles are going to help you guide your life. I remember as a child, my mom told, teenager, like, I'm going to take us a little bit off, just a little bit off. You can't get pregnant, right? That's what she said. But I'm like, well, why? I'm thinking, why? I'm seriously, I'm just honestly, I'm thinking, why? Right? Not understanding that this can ruin your future. You're not experienced, you're not mature enough to be responsible for a child. And a lot of times when your parents said don't do it, the most important thing was for us to realize just don't do it. They're not going to tell me anything that's going to hurt me. But I didn't think that way as a teenager, right? And so I think it's so important that we're mindful that they're telling us and instructors is teaching us, not to adopt some of these behaviors. And my mom did that because there was, other friends or people that I knew who were, you know, going down that path. So I think it's important to listen to those instructions because it helps us. And the principles that God has given us to help us in our life, to navigate our life, are important as well. And they're there for a reason to help us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Now for the moment you've all been waiting for. The moment I robbed you of last month, but I promised myself I would not this month. It
Okay.
is time for the 3 liberating steps. Now,
Okay.
first and foremost, I would like to say, and I started the conversation off with Maya, and I'm going to end the conversation with Maya. Maya Angelou said, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you, right? Statistically speaking, 74% of individuals in faith based support groups report improved mental health outcomes after sharing and reframing their stories. So, Lisa, if you were to advise someone on the first step they can take today to start rewriting their story, what would it be? And I would say you don't have to stop at the first.
The first things that comes to mind in this moment is to forgive yourself. Because sometimes we're so harsh with ourselves because of mistakes, well, decisions that we've made, and the outcome of them have affected certain aspects of our life. So I would say that would be one of the first things that I would say. And then I would say, with all you're getting, get an understanding. For me, it's been so helpful to pray, reflect, talk to someone, um, because our relationships really truly do matter, and they help us as we're in this taking this journey together. And to understand that God loves us. Yeah, that's my first thoughts.
That's your first thought. So, what'd you say number one was again?
Forgive yourself.
Forgive yourself. Okay, I like that. Um, I put a question in the comment section if you're on YouTube. Again, I want you to share with me what do you believe are the 3 steps to rewriting your story. Now, if you listened to this conversation, I'm just gonna put it out there. If you listened to this conversation, you heard them already. I'm just going to tell you right now, you heard them already. They just weren't in any prescribed order. They did not necessarily come in a particular way. However, what I would tell you is that, like I said before, go back and look at episode 1 last month, and then come back and look at this one again because you'll see how closely aligned and how interconnected they are. So, first thing first, like I said before, you have to be able to identify your old patterns. Now, a lot of times we don't necessarily identify our old patterns because we don't know where to look. Therefore, because we don't know where to look, those old patterns now are blind spots, right? So, understanding something more profound, there are some principles that exist. And so, those principles now reveal patterns. So, step one is to identify the patterns, the old patterns that I need to reframe. Now, after I identify those patterns, reframe it, and I reframe it with faith and consciousness. What does that really mean? Again, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Okay. So now it requires hope, which means that it has to be a positive future outcome and it requires action. So if I am going to see the old action, identify the old action, then reframe it using faith and mindfulness. What is the mindfulness piece? The mindfulness piece means that number one, I need to understand that both the past, the present, and the future are all present with me at the same time. The issue is that a lot of us lean to the past for advice when the past should not be the one that gives us advice. The past should be the one that gives me instructions, right? Instructions about what? Instructions about the things that I did back then so I can actually learn the things that I shouldn't be doing right now. That's not the thing that I should be doing in the future. I get the things that I should be doing from the future from the future. The future tells me the behavior that I need to have in order to get the outcome that I want. So now that's the whole faith piece. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for. That's the one that's instructed me. Okay. So now mindfulness practices within there. Is it going to be frightening? Yes. Will I get frustrated? Yes. Will I get tired? Yes. Will people get on my nerves? Yes. Will all these other things, experiences exist? Yes. Why? Because you're human. So you have to practice mindfulness in the midst of this so that you don't stop, give up, quit, or come up with any other excuse under the sun that you can come up with. A lot of times what we do is we pre-position the excuse that we're going to make. Well, I'm going to try it. Try is an excuse to fail. I'll say it again. Try is an excuse to fail. The minute I start something, a sentence off with try, I am telling myself subconsciously that it's okay for me not to complete this because I've already asked for your forgiveness before I've even started. So again, identify the old pattern. After identifying the old pattern, I reframe it using faith and consciousness. Then number 3 is reinforce your new story through action and community. Again, action and community. Well, wait, what's the difference between this action and the action that's aligned with faith? Because I need an accountability partner. I'll say it again. I need an accountability partner. There is, I think it's called the Hawthorne theory, that when you look at a thing behaves a particular way because you're looking at it now. That's how accountability works. When I know that you're looking at me, expecting the thing that I told you that I was going to do to be the behavior that I display, when I know that you're going to check, when I know that you're going to ask the question, then I am more consciously aware of doing the thing that I said I'm going to do. So those are my 3. I give them to you again. Again, the 3 are recognize the old narrative, reframe it with faith and consciousness, and reinforce your new story through action and community. Okay. Any thoughts, concerns, or questions, or anything you want to add in relation to that? You're muted.
I really do like, and I think it's very important that we talk about community and walking together, because individualism seems to be what we are thinking that's important in this age. I think I hear a lot of it. You know, I can walk alone. I can do this alone. And God never intended for us to walk alone. He never sent the disciples out one by one. He sent them out 2 by 2. So it's important that we understand the importance of us being in relationship. How can we say we love God when we've never seen him? But we cannot love our brother and sister who we see each and every day. So those things are important and they're meaningful because that's how we're supposed to walk together in this life. You know, don't keep anything to yourself. You know, if you're going through something, find someone to talk to. I think that's important because that's the only way that we're going to grow. Being in relationship and like Coach said, having that accountability partner is very, I think, extremely important. So I just wanted to add that.
No, greatly appreciate that. I want to bring up Miss Charlotte. Miss Charlotte Joy been dropping dimes all day. We miss you. I just want to say that. She said, "My past is a chapter in my unfinished book." Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. So that being said, we're going to do our final thoughts real quick. Lisa, you have the floor. Anything that you want to share, anything you want to talk about as it pertains to, your past isn't broken, rewrite your story in 3 liberating steps, or anything that, that God lays on your heart.
What I would say is I was thinking about hope, our forward thoughts, and how we have to be intentional about our future, because dwelling on the past is not going to get us the results that we need for a life that continues to move forward each and every moment, not just second or minute. So I think it's very important for us to think forward, look forward, and hope and be hopeful and have an expectation of an outcome. You know, God says He has an expected end for us. And I think we should have that as well for ourselves and be mindful of being in relationship. Don't isolate yourself. That's not God's plan for us. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think I would say the past is the past. Leave it there. I'm gonna say it again. The past is the past. Leave it there. I'm talking about you from your perspective, so forth and so on. I'm not talking about the stories. The stories should be shared. The past itself, and this is where I've seen people make several mistakes. The past itself is not your testimony unless you're pointing it at the one who is the testator. Now, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. The past is not your testimony unless you're pointing it at the story, at the one who is the testator. We have gotten so accustomed to sharing our stories because we want people to feel sympathy for us. We do have a past. We all have a past. We all have stories to share. But if I'm not sharing my story because I'm attempting to help somebody else by pointing them through the person to which all of my help came from, because I look to the hills, then I'm only sharing my story because I'm trying to rob them in that moment of what they're sharing. So get to the point of recognizing that even though the past may not have been what I wanted it to be back then, it was necessary for me to be who I am right now. I think we really do subconsciously believe that there are aspects of my past that made me into the person I am today. No, all of your past, the ugly parts of it, the part that you got buried in the closet behind 15 feet of clothes and up under the shoes and stashed away in a box that you got a lock to, and you threw the key in the backyard and dug it up and hid it. That part also is part of your story. And that is the thing that made you to be who you are today. So embrace that. Embrace the person that you are today so that you can share the stories from last that took place years ago for the growth and development of somebody else. That's the key. Embrace who you are today so you can share the old stories to the younger generation so that they can use those stories to catapult themselves into the greatness that they're destined to be. So, that being said, listen, greatly appreciate you guys. Greatly appreciate all the comments, man. You guys were on it. Some people I have not seen in a while. Great to see you guys. Abe, Adrian, good to see you. Welcome. Listen, if you guys have not scanned that QR code yet, and in preparation for Saturday's webinar, I think you're gonna miss out on something. And then I got a surprise for you guys who actually show up, just so that you know. So that being said, listen, have a great and wonderful rest of your day. Stay warm. Don't do anything foolish. Stay warm. Check on your loved ones. Make sure that everybody is in a safe space. Listen, do not be afraid to open your door for somebody who needs it. Okay. Listen, let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else. And we'll see you guys next month.